Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. If you've ever watched these extreme downhill riders just absolutely hurtling down a mountain, you've probably thought to yourself, okay, they must be absolutely crazy. But today, we're diving into a really fascinating presentation by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa Formation that uncovers something so much deeper than that. We're going to deconstruct what might just be the ultimate biological anomaly, the extreme downhill mountain biking athlete. I mean, on the surface, it looks like pure adrenaline and just reckless abandon, right? But underneath it all, it's actually this incredible symphony of high-speed neuroscience, extreme biomechanics, and, well, a pretty dark psychological paradox. We're going to peel back the layers of these athletes to understand exactly what separates a champion from the rest of us.
Section 1. Beyond Extreme Sports. Okay, let's dive into this. Before we even look at the anatomy of the rider, we really need to redefine our terms. We throw the word extreme around a lot these days, but there is a massive gulf between a quirky hobby and, lethal reality. Take chess boxing, for example. It's a fascinating hybrid test of the mind and body, where competitors literally alternate between rounds of boxing and chess. It's extreme in its own quirky way, for sure, but it's relatively safe. Now compare that to free-ride mountain biking, especially events like the Red Bull Rampage. Here you've got athletes willingly launching themselves off 20-meter near-vertical sandstone cliffs in the Utah desert. There's no stopwatch, there's no padded mat waiting at the bottom. It is a brutal, gravity-defying spectacle where the sport literally crosses the line from a physical test into a pure art of survival.
And to really grasp the sheer velocity we're talking about, just look at this number, 167.6 kilometers per hour. That is the absolutely terrifying speed record set by the Austrian rider Markus Stockel, speeding down the side of a volcano in Chile. I mean, no way, right? But even on a standard World Cup downhill track, riders are routinely hitting speeds of 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. And they're doing this through dense forests and over jagged rock gardens. At speeds like that, your margin for error isn't measured in meters, it's literally measured in milliseconds.
So how does a human survive this, let alone master it? Well, in this explainer, we're going to perform a sort of medical and mechanical autopsy on the sport. We'll walk through 4 key layers. 1. The anti-gravity machine. 2. The biomechanics of chaos. 3. The high-speed brain. And 4. The psychology of risk. Let's get into it.
Section 2, the anti-gravity machine.
Let's start with the first structural layer, which is the hardware. You really can't understand the athlete without understanding the absolute engineering marvel that is the modern downhill bike. It's basically a purely gravitational machine. Think of it like an unpowered Formula One car. To fight the sheer violence of the mountain, these bikes are equipped with massive 200mm suspensions on the front and back, super similar to a motocross motorcycle, and they're designed to absorb multi-meter drops. And the brakes? They are these incredibly powerful hydraulic systems with 4 piston calipers. They are so strong that if you pull the lever just a tiny fraction too hard with a single index finger, the kinetic energy will literally eject you right over the handlebars.
Section 3, the biomechanics of chaos. Now, let's transition from the mechanical hardware of the bike to the human flesh that's actually riding it, because the physical toll this sport demands is almost incomprehensible. It's totally fascinating because the rider is rarely actually pedaling. Instead, downhill mountain biking is this intensely acyclic effort. They're in a constant, brutal state of isometric contraction. A champion has to completely decouple their upper body from the violently moving machine beneath them, using a concept called dissociation. It's a kinetic chain. It starts with the eyes looking ahead, which turns the shoulders, which then shifts the pelvis, and finally, that maneuvers the bike. To survive all this, the rider drops their heels, a technique aptly called heels down, which lowers their center of gravity and pushes those massive braking forces straight into the pedals instead of their handlebars. But here is where the body fights back. If you hold on to a violently vibrating handlebar for 3 to 5 minutes, you risk a catastrophic physiological failure known as arm pump. Imagine clenching your fist as hard as you possibly can for 3 minutes straight. Now imagine doing that while bouncing over literal boulders. Because the rider is gripping the bar so intensely, the constant muscle contraction acts exactly like a tourniquet. Oxygenated blood pumps in, but the toxic, deoxygenated venous blood cannot escape. The forearms swell up and basically turn to stone. The hands become completely paralyzed. To prevent this fatal loss of control, the elite athletes act as living hydraulic shock absorbers. They use their triceps and biceps in dynamic co-contraction, micro-releasing their grip during the split seconds they're airborne just to let the blood flow. It's absolutely crucial.
Section 4, the high-speed brain. Okay, we're zooming in even closer now, moving from muscle tissue and blood flow into the actual neurological wiring required to survive at 80 kilometers per hour. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer processing speed of the human nervous system. When a downhill bike starts to slide or drift, managing that isn't just about pure strength. It's about a high-frequency haptic feedback loop. The mechanical receptors in the rider's hands and feet detect the subtle change in vibration the exact moment a tire loses grip. Through spinal reflexes, the leg muscles instantly adjust their pressure on the pedals, making 10 to 15 microcorrections every single second to find tire grip before the conscious brain even registers that a slip has happened. That's just wild. So, the crucial point here is the vast difference between a beginner's brain and a champion's brain. A normal human brain reacts to danger. If a beginner sees a massive rock on the trail, fear triggers paralysis, resulting in target fixation. They stare right at the rock, and consequently, they crash right into it. A champion's brain, on the other hand, utilizes what neurologists call a forward model. The cerebellum actively predicts the slide and pre-activates the muscles before the bike even breaks traction. Plus, their vestibulo-ocular reflex is trained to absolute perfection, stabilizing their vision like a built-in biological gimbal. It is genuinely awe-inspiring to think about how they maintain laser focus on the exit of the turn rather than the obstacle, even while their skull is taking violent, high-speed vibrations.
Section 5. The psychology of risk. And this brings us to our final and frankly deepest and darkest layer. We're entering the realm of the psychological and ethical paradox of this sport, willingly overriding our fundamental human survival instincts. We really have to pose the biological paradox here. Why? Why do these athletes willingly subject themselves to guaranteed catastrophic injuries? In downhill mountain biking, it is just an accepted fact that it's not a matter of if you'll break a bone, but when. Shattered collarbones act as literal bodily fuses to protect the spine. Riders routinely face severe spinal trauma and concussions. From a strictly biological standpoint, risking permanent paralysis for a medal or a 2-minute video just seems like complete nonsense. Well, according to Dr. Delong's presentation, the dark drivers behind this behavior are intensely chemical. First off, these athletes are often biologically addicted to their own brain's survival chemicals. Surviving a near-death drop releases a massive cocktail of endogenous opiates. We're talking dopamine and endorphins. Normal life just becomes way too dull in comparison. Second, to even drop into a rampage course, they literally have to induce hypofrontality, which means shutting down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for prudence and doubt. It's essentially voluntary, temporary madness. And finally, what truly makes a champion is their ability to reprogram their amygdala, the brain's fear center, after suffering massive trauma. Normal humans develop a strong aversion to the thing that nearly killed them. Champions? They rewire their brains to go do it again, without losing a single fraction of a second of speed. But Dr. Delong's analysis also shifts to a really interesting ethical provocation about the extreme sports industry itself. He refers to it as the marketing of hemoglobin. There is a deeply cynical gladiator dynamic at play here. Major energy drink sponsors and corporations totally monetize these lethal risks. They reap the millions of views, the viral engagement, and the massive global brand awareness when a stunt goes well, and sadly, sometimes even when a spectacular crash occurs. Yet it's the athlete alone who pays the permanent physical price in broken bones, chronic pain, and potential lifelong disability once all those cameras are turned off. Which leaves us with this haunting final thought. After deconstructing the incredible biology, the unmatched neurological processing, and the incredibly heavy psychological toll of these athletes, what are we actually watching? Is this extreme sport the absolute pinnacle of human athletic and evolutionary mastery? Is it an inspiring display of what the human machine is truly capable of? Or is it a modern gladiator spectacle built on fragile, chemically addicted victims driven by a predatory industry? It's for sure a question that challenges us to rethink every single awe-inspiring extreme sports clip we scroll past online. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gave you a completely new perspective on the anatomy of a champion.